Have you ever heard of a girl who was buried in shame, only for destiny to crown her in glory? This is the story of a young orphan, betrayed by blood, mocked by neighbors, and forced into a marriage meant to destroy her future. But what her enemies planned for her downfall became the very path to her rise. In the bustling town of Nsukka, Nigeria, there lived a girl named Nkiru, whose name meant patience will pay. But patience was all she seemed to have left after life robbed her of everything else. When she was only 6 years old, her mother died suddenly, leaving her in the care of her gentle father, Obinna. Though grief sat heavy on him, Obinna poured all his love into his only daughter. He combed her hair each morning with his large, clumsy hands, tied her shoelaces, and whispered to her, "Nkiru, you will be great. One day, you will speak for those who have no voice." It was his dream that she would become a lawyer. Years passed and Obinna remarried. His new wife, Ngozi, appeared kind at first. She called Nkiru my daughter, cooked her favorite meals, and helped in the family's shoe business. For a while, laughter returned to the house. But fate can be cruel. By the time Nkiru turned 18, her father fell gravely ill. On his deathbed, he held her trembling hands and made her promise, "Nkiru, never give up on your dream. Go to school. Become the lawyer we always dreamed of." She wept and vowed to keep his words. 2 weeks later, Obinna was gone. When Nkiru received her university admission letter, her heart leapt. She thought at last she could fulfill her father's dream. But the very woman her father had trusted, the woman who once smiled at her like a mother, turned into her greatest enemy. Ngozi tore the letter from her hands and hissed, "You will not waste a single kobo on school while I suffer. You will hawk these slippers until your feet bleed." And so the orphan became a servant in her own father's house. She carried trays of slippers through the dusty streets while her peers sat in lecture halls. They mocked her, calling her the lawyer who sells shoes. At night, she wept alone, clutching her admission letter to her chest like a lifeline. But Ngozi's cruelty had no end. One evening, Nkiru overheard her plotting. "There is a crippled beggar by the junction. He is looking for a wife. I will give him Nkiru. Let her life rot with him." Nkiru's blood ran cold. She cried to her father's memory in the dark. "Why did you leave me here? Why did you trust her?" But dawn brought no rescue. Her stepmother dressed her in her late mother's worn-out gown and dragged her to the small parish church. The crowd gathered, not to celebrate, but to laugh. Children sang, "Cripple's wife, hawker bride." Neighbors shook their heads. When the priest asked Nkiru if she would take the beggar, her voice broke, but she whispered, "I do." Laughter roared through the pews. But then, destiny revealed its hand. As they stepped out of the church, the ground trembled with the sound of engines. A convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled into the yard. Uniformed men leapt out, bowing low before the so-called beggar. "Sir, we are ready," the driver said with deep respect. The crowd fell silent. Nkiru froze. Her new husband, the man mocked as a cripple, was lifted into the car with honor. He turned to her and said softly, "Come, my love. Let us go home." The convoy drove through wide roads until it stopped before a palace-like mansion guarded by soldiers. Maids rushed forward, bowing, "Welcome, madam." Nkiru trembled as she looked at her husband. His name was Chike Obi, founder of Obi Logistics, a billionaire who had chosen to disguise himself as a beggar after losing the use of his legs in an accident. "Money blinds people," he told her. "I wanted a woman who would see my heart, not my wealth. The day you gave me food at the junction, I knew you were the one." From that day, Nkiru's world transformed. She was no longer a hawker mocked in the market. She was addressed as Madam in a mansion, studying law at the university her father had dreamed of. Yet she never allowed pride to cloud her heart. Every night she prayed, thanking her father and God for lifting her from shame to glory. But shadows still lingered. Enemies plotted against Chike. His former fiancée, jealous of his new wife, conspired with business rivals to destroy his empire. One night, a traitor inside the mansion tried to open the gates for assassins. But the plot was uncovered, and the betrayer confessed under the law. When the rivals tried to ruin Chike's reputation at a public gala, it was Nkiru who stood boldly before flashing cameras and declared, "My husband is not defined by a wheelchair. He is defined by vision, courage, and strength. And I am honored to be his wife." Her words spread across the nation, silencing enemies and winning admiration. Finally, Nkiru returned to her stepmother's house, not in rags, but in royal splendor. The woman who had once mocked her fell to her knees in shame, begging forgiveness. And Nkiru, remembering her father's words, lifted her up and said, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Months later, she sat in her university lecture hall, whispering to herself, "I kept my promise, Daddy. I did not give up." And so the orphan who was forced into misery became a queen crowned in dignity, her father's dream fulfilled. Moral of the story: true love is not built on wealth or beauty, but on the strength of the heart. Wickedness may rise like a flood, but destiny always lifts the righteous higher. When God crowns you, no mockery, betrayal, or enemy can remove your crown.